So what's the reality? Is it true that I'm not a fan of the FIRE movement, financially independent, retire early? Yeah, you know, I'd love to be able to say it's a little bit of clickbait, but candidly it's not. I'm not a huge fan of it, which I think for a lot of people is surprising. I've been a fee-only financial advisor now for over 20 years. I've helped guide hundreds of people into retirement, and one of my takeaways and the purpose why I got started on YouTube was I think there's a large group of people that could retire early, and by that I mean in their 50s, that don't. Instead, we cruise through our 50s, we cruise through our early 60s, and we retire at 65, 67, something like that. And I think we give up the youth of our senior years without really giving it a lot of thought. So for somebody like that, how can I not be a fan of FIRE, right? I mean, if I'm a fan of people retiring in their 50s, and it's not right for everybody, but for the people it is, I'm a fan of them doing that. How can I be a fan of people retiring in their late 40s or early 50s, but not be a fan of FIRE? So here's why. The FIRE movement, I think, really over indexes sacrificing in your 20s and 30s. I mean, it's extreme sacrificing in order to be able to be financially independent in your mid-30s or your 40s. Now, I applaud that. And the secret to becoming a millionaire, the secret to becoming financially independent, the secret to having, for many of the FIRE people, they'll have multiple millions of dollars when they retire. And the reason is, the secret is time. If you save $10,000 a month and you get 7% return on that, it's going to take you 31 years to save your first $1 million. And if you say, okay, I want to retire earlier, so you start saving $20,000, you double that. Guess when you get to retire, right? A lot of people would say 15 years. It takes 31 at $10,000. A lot of people would say, okay, well, you're going to be able to retire at 15 years, but that's not the case. It's like 22 or 23. And I'll show you the charts here that'll show you the exact numbers. But the point is, you have to save a ton of money early on in order to become financially independent. I mean, I'm talking people are saving 40, 50, 60% of their take-home pay. And my question is, what are you giving up? And that's the case whether I'm talking about retiring or continuing to work in your 50s, or the FIRE movement, sacrificing extremely in your 20s. What are you giving up to achieve your goal? And make sure that you're making that sacrifice consciously and deliberately, and you have fully thought through what you're doing. So let's say, you know, a 21-year-old, a 22-year-old is making $80,000 a year, which is a really nice salary for somebody in their early 20s. And the average household expenses are $50,000. Now, the FIRE movement is you're going to save a lot more than that, but that's the average household. So you're saving that $20,000. That doesn't get you there, right? You've got to save a lot more. Let's say you're saving $40,000. Well, now you're saving 50% of your gross pay. You don't have a lot of room for the other fun things in life, and you're only 20 once. And I want you to take full advantage of your 20s. There's a book written by, it's called Die with Zero, that's written by Bill Perkins. And in that book, and this is a concept that's really fundamental to who I am as a financial advisor, is this concept of making good decisions, of understanding what the trade-off is. And he tells the story of, in the book, when he was in his 20s, one of his colleagues at work, you know, he was in this high-pressure job, Wall Street job. It's all about getting the next promotion, climbing the ladder. And he had a friend at work that decided to go, I believe it was backpacking through Europe, and took 3 months off of work and actually borrowed money to do this. And Bill Perkins thought that was nuts. You know, how could you do that? You're sacrificing your career and you're borrowing money instead of saving money. And I think it illustrates my philosophy as well, because his friend came back from the trip. His friend had incredible memories, incredible experiences, and got back in the workforce. And you know what? Was able to re-engage, was able to put himself back out there, got a very similar job, if not the exact same job, and just continued on with his path. He paid off that loan and kept going. So, you know, oftentimes my clients will ask me to speak to their 20-year-old kids about the importance of saving money, about about the importance of building a foundation, about the importance of time. Because in that example where I talked to you about the difference between saving $10,000 and $20,000, if you want to retire earlier, it's not about doubling how much you save. It's about having time work for you. It's the last few years. Here's that chart again. It's those last few years of once you have that bulk of money where you start accelerating and you start making movement. So time is important, and my clients have heard me talk about this. You know, most of my clients are at least 40 when they come talk to me, and many, you know, end up being, you know, I've worked with many of them for 20 plus years. So, you know, now they're in their 60s or 70s or 80s, and they'll ask me to speak to their kid or their grandkid about the importance of saving money and time working on your side. They know that's my philosophy, but, you know, I sit down with them, I say, I'm happy to meet with your 20-year-old kids. I'd love to do that. But let me share with you first what I'm going to tell them, because I want to make sure you're okay with the message I'm going to give them. And that is, your 20s is really about three things. First, it's about having fun, you know, with friends and doing things. You only have one chance to go backpacking through Europe with your friends and staying at hostels, or going to South America and taking the bus, taking the train from country to country. There's one opportunity in your life, and what I'm telling their 20-year-old kids is you should say yes to those. Even if you have to ask mom and dad, hey, can I borrow some money to do a trip like that? And I do want you to pay back mom and dad. I don't want you to just offer to pay back mom and dad. I do want you to pay back mom and dad, but I want you to say yes as much as you can. So your 20s are really about having fun in those experiences that you're only going to get once in your life, before you have your own children, before you have a mortgage, before you have all of the responsibilities of the world on your shoulder. I want you to go out there and I want you to seize the day. Carpe diem, as Robin Williams said in Dead Poets Society, and I really believe that. And I believe it was Socrates said, memento mori, you know, remember that we all die. And I think that's important. That when you're in your 20s, you're young, you're filled with piss and vinegar, if you'll excuse the term, but you've got a lot of vitality. So I want 20-year-olds to do that. So that's one of the things that being in your 20s about. The next thing is identifying maybe the industry that you want to spend your career in. Finding an industry that vibes with you, that feels like, okay, this might be my life's work. You know, for some people that's high tech. For other people that might be being an investment banker. For somebody like myself, when I got into money management, financial planning, retirement planning, I came home and I told my wife, this is my life's work. I have found my life's work, and that was 22 years ago. Your 20s are really about, if you're fortunate, being able to identify that industry. And then super importantly, maybe having fun is the most important in my mind on your 20s, but the very close second, or tied with that one, is finding mentors, good mentors that can be river guides to you, that can help you navigate and help you think about, you know, which career path is right for you, how to make good decisions. Because boy, in your 20s, it's about making good decisions. If you can make good decisions in your 20s, you have 40 years of leverage behind you that you can benefit from that. Why am I not a fan of the FIRE movement? I think you give up too much. Your 20s and your early 30s are a special time, and I believe life is as much about balance as it is anything else. It's about, I believe in both. I don't believe in either or, and I want you to have both. So the FIRE movement, I think, is an either or. I'm either going to be able to enjoy the next 15 years, the next 10 years of my life, or I'm going to set myself up to be financially independent. I'd rather, instead of you taking 7 years to try to become financially independent, I'd rather you take 10 years. I'd rather you take a little more time. I'd rather you have that balance in your life. Now, this is not prescriptive. This is not what, you know, I'm not telling you what to do. That's the beautiful thing about life. You get to live your life, you know. I am 60 years old now, almost 60. I have been able to live many chapters of my life and make those decisions. I was talking to my wife earlier today. In an earlier life, before I became a financial advisor, I was an entrepreneur. And when we had kids, it was time to hang up that entrepreneur's hat and, frankly, get a dependable salary, because I had responsibilities, right? I wanted to have a home in a place with good schools that I could raise my family in. I wanted the kids to have that dependability, to not have to worry about, you know, what's dad's next entrepreneurial activity. And it's When you're in your 20s, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have that responsibility, that weight of the world on your shoulders. So that's a big thing to trade off. So again, this isn't prescriptive. It's not what you should do, but my caution would be to really think through what you're giving up. And is that worth it? And the only person that can make that decision is you. Now, I can tell you, I know people that have done the FIRE movement, and boy, now that they're on the other side, they're super happy. And they may not be retired, right? The FIRE movement is financially independent, retire early. But the key there is the first two words, the financially independent. It is a great thing to be financially independent as early in your career as you can be. Although I would say, I think it's okay to trade off becoming financially independent 5 years later. Instead of becoming financially independent at 32, maybe 37, and enjoying the journey more versus sacrificing 80% and grinding away. So I think it's worth having that, but being financially independent is really a gift to yourself. Reid Hoffman, who's the founder of LinkedIn, which is the workplace social media site where it's essentially the online resume holder for all of us. Reid Hoffman said, and I'm paraphrasing him here, but working for money is a terrible motivation for your work, for your career. And you want to be in a position where you can choose your life's work based on what your passions are, based on what your God-given talents are, and what you're meant to do. You want to do that versus, I'm good at this, I make good money at this, and I can't afford to change careers anymore. So the beautiful thing about being financially independent, let's say you think you found your spot, you found your industry, you found the type of work that you want to do. If you're financially independent and later that changes and you're like, that was my life's work for 7 years, but it's changed now, I want to do something different. And I think I am unusual that my life's work was my life's work for the majority of my career for 22 years. But if it changes, the nice thing about being financially independent is you can change. Or let's say, things change at your company. You still love your life's work, but you get a new boss and you and your new boss don't vibe. If you're not financially independent, you can't just say, well, my new boss and I don't vibe. And I want you to have that freedom. I want you to have that flexibility. Regular viewers of my channel know that I've talked a lot about the importance of having an emergency fund because it gives you optionality, right? The first thing is, over half of Americans cannot afford to pay out of pocket for $1,000 unexpected expense, right? They don't know where that money's going to come from. And if you have an emergency fund, first, it covers that, but more importantly, it gives you optionality if, God forbid, you were to lose your job. You don't have to take the first job that comes along. And if you've got a mortgage to pay, if you've got kids' college tuition that you're trying to pay, if you're trying to save for retirement, if your health care insurance is running out because you lost your other job, a lot of people would feel pressured to take the very next job that comes along. So the emergency fund gives you optionality. And the nice thing about the FIRE movement, that the first two letters, the first two pieces of that financially independent, gives you that optionality to make sure that you're always following your passion. You're always focused on what's important to you in life. And I want you to also think about what's important to you. Most of my viewers are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And again, my channel is mostly about encouraging people to think about retiring early, to get out of autopilot in their 40s and 50s and be thoughtful and deliberate about if they have enough money to retire. First off, finding out if they have enough money to retire. But second off, if they do, I want them to be thoughtful and deliberate and think, is now the right time? And that's what this video here is about, is 5 reasons to retire as soon as you can. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.